Hey everyone, Dan here again. Along with catching and hitting and fielding videos for youth ball players, I'm going to start putting out videos and information, blogs and articles and things like that on Coaching 101, if you will, because I think that there's a lot of really good-hearted volunteers who donate their time to Little League from T-ball all the way up through majors. And I think there's a lot more people out there who are kind of on the fringe and would volunteer if they felt more competent in what it is that they're teaching and how to run practices, more drills, and just feeling really organized so they know that they could deliver a great experience for their kids and other people's kids. And so I think there's a big hole there where for information for volunteers, and so that's my hope, is to be able to provide more information and drills and things like that, so that way you can run better practices, better seasons, and hopefully help make kids more successful, because who doesn't enjoy things that they get good at? And so my hope is that, or the theory is that, if from the grassroots level we help more volunteers teach kids the skills of the sports for both baseball and softball, that more kids will want to stick with it, and they'll progress into later higher levels as they grow up. So building the sport through helping volunteers build the kids and their skills. And so I'm just going to jump right into it today, focusing on T-ball. And so I'm just going to give 3 quick tips on really running better practices. And so I'll start with number 1. Number 1 is constantly keeping the kids engaged with what's going on at practice. So what I mean by that is ensuring that there's very little standing around other than maybe a quick drink break during the 45 minutes to an hour that you can really keep their attention span for practice. And so what I mean by keeping them engaged, in my last 10 years of experience coaching kids of all ages, I'd say that one of the better ways of doing this is having stations or circuits or things like that where kids could be working on a skill, kind of rotate throughout practice, whether you're doing it with the whole team at one time and then moving on from drill to drill, or whether you have enough coaches to run multiple drills at one time. This is the way that practices are run even at collegiate levels. For example, when I coached at Baylor University as a grad student in their athletic performance or strength and conditioning department, I got to observe and watch the football team practice. And what they would do is have exactly what I said. They'd be engaged and moving quick through a 90-minute practice where they'd be jumping from drill to drill. There'd be very little standing around time. And so what I'm talking about isn't just from young ages, but it's from young ages all the way up through even collegiate and potentially professional careers as well, if someone was so fortunate to get that far. And so keeping them engaged, not having any standing around time or very little standing around time, that's number 1. Along with that, number 2, and these aren't in any particular order, it's hard to rank them. Number 2 would be making the drills and practice fun and competitive. Maybe not necessarily against one another, although that's good at times, but maybe even competitive with themselves. And so what I mean by that is turning things into a game. So finding ways, and I'll post videos and drills and tips on making the skill learning aspect of it fun through games and competition in the future, but think of it like that, like you're at practice, keeping them engaged and making everything that you do have some sort of fun aspect to it, or some sort of competitive aspect to it, or maybe some sort of challenge to it, like a hula hoop that's hanging on the fence, or a garbage can that you lay down that kids have to field and then throw a ball into it. Things like that that make it fun for them. So number 1 is keep them engaged. Number 2 is use competition and challenges and drills that are really fun and for them, and that are appropriately challenging to keep them moving from station to station, but also helping them enjoy what's going on at practice as well. So number 1 is engagement. Number 2 is utilizing competition and heavily focusing on skill work at practices. And number 3 kind of ties in with number 2, is at young ages especially, you really want to focus a lot on the physical skills of the game. So fielding ground balls, learning to throw, learning to swing a bat, things like that should be 100% of the focus, especially at the T-ball level, because before they can even think about fielding a ball and throwing it to first base, or things like that where the game starts to get slightly more cerebral, that can't happen unless their skills are somewhat second nature. You can't think unless you can perform the basic fundamentals of the sport. And so it's important that at young ages especially, a ton of the time at practice is focused on skill work. And you can build other aspects in that are starting to get more cerebral for them, like knowing the bases as an example. So in your warm-ups, maybe one of the drills is, hey, let's run to first base, run straight through it, go as fast as you can, race the person next to you. Things like that that make it fun, engaging, teach them basic skills, and you can tie in some of that cerebral stuff to maybe the drills themselves or little activities that you can do where you're kind of disguising the cerebral aspect of the game or learning the rules and things like that. You're disguising that as a fun drill. So those are my 3 tips for coaching a T-ball practice, and stay tuned because I'll put out practice plans and more videos in the near and distant future. Thanks.